Have you ever heard phrases like, if I were richer, I wish it were true, and God save the king, and thought, wait a minute, isn't it was and not were, and why is it save instead of saves? Surely it's God saves the king, like the king saves the date of the coronation. Well, today we're diving into a hidden feature of the English language that explains all of these cases, and it's called the subjunctive. If you're watching this video, you're likely familiar with English. My demographics tell me that most of yous are in the United States, followed by the United Kingdom and Canada. So for many people watching, English will be their first language. And so learning grammar in a more structured environment likely came as a result of learning a foreign language at school. If that's the case, you'll perhaps remember having to learn how to conjugate different verbs and learn their endings in different tenses to express when actions happened. That's certainly where I first encountered
the subjunctive mood.
Irritatingly, a mood, probably because it always put me in a bad one. Languages like French and Spanish make their subjunctive forms really obvious, especially when you're learning them in school. You might have heard phrases like il faut que tu viennes in French or espero que tengas un buen día in Spanish. Now these unusual verb endings signal that what you're saying isn't a fact, it's a hope, a wish, or a condition. But shock horror, this sneaky mood also exists in English, and you're likely using it without ever having been made aware of it. In linguistics, a mood tells us the attitude of the speaker towards what they're saying. Most of the time, we use the indicative mood. That's for facts and statements, like she's tired. Then there's the imperative mood, be quiet, or subscribe. That's for commands. And finally, there's the elusive subjunctive mood. It's used for things that aren't real, wishes, hypotheticals, demands, or possibilities, like if she were here, or I wish it were easier. But where did the subjunctive even come from? Why do languages go to the trouble of developing this extra form for people to learn? Well, the short answer is that humans have always needed to talk about things that aren't real. Hypotheticals, possibilities, wishes, even polite requests, they're all part of how we interact, and grammar evolved to help us do just that. Most European languages, including English, have roots in Proto-Indo-European, which had an entire system of moods, including the subjunctive and some others like optative. As languages evolved, those moods often stuck around, especially in Latin and the Romance languages like French, Spanish, and Italian. It's not just grammar for grammar's sake, it lets us be nuanced, polite, and imaginative. Instead of barking orders, we can say, I suggest that he go, or if I were you, making it about suggestion and possibility rather than command. Why are English speakers more likely to learn about the subjunctive in foreign language classes rather than when studying their own language? The biggest reason is the simplification of English verb conjugations over time. In Old English, there were distinct endings for verbs in the subjunctive mood, but as English evolved through Middle and early modern periods, many of those endings were dropped. Without those clear markers, the subjunctive began to fade, blending into the indicative. That's why today, only a few irregular forms like were instead of was really stand out. In short, less conjugation means fewer grammatical moods. In a language like French or Spanish, in contrast, which still has lots of verb endings and crucially a specific subjunctive verb ending, it's not only much easier to spot, but it's also more important to know and to use. Here's an example in English. If I was rich becomes if I were rich, as even though I normally goes with was, in the subjunctive we use were to show that it's hypothetical. If I were rich. The subjunctive shows up in older literature, for instance the Bible, and even in political terms. Take this line, hallowed be thy name, from the Lord's Prayer. That be isn't the usual verb form, it's subjunctive. Same with thy kingdom come and thy will be done. These aren't statements, they're wishes or reverent hopes. Shakespeare also loved the subjunctive. Think of if music be the food of play, play on. Even in the national anthem in the UK and several other countries around the world, God Save the King isn't because the king particularly needs saving, but it's rather a hopeful request that God will look after the king. We also use the subjunctive after certain verbs like suggest, recommend, and insist. You would say, I recommend that he go to the doctor, not he goes. It's subtle, but again, it's grammatically correct. In casual speech, people often ignore the subjunctive. You'll hear if I was you as often as you'll hear if I were you, but in formal writing, it does still matter. So let's see what you've picked up. Which of these examples is correct? Option A, I wish I was taller, and option B, I wish I were taller. The correct answer is B. I wish triggers the subjunctive because you're talking about an unreal situation, and that's why we use were instead of was. So next time you hear someone say, if I were you, you'll know they're not just being fancy, they're using the English subjunctive correctly. The subjunctive mood is fading more and more from everyday speech. In general, speech is becoming less formal, and as more of those distinct verb endings drop off over time, the subjunctive just becomes less and less noticeable. Would but it were different, though linguistic needs must. Still, the subjunctive clings on, especially in formal writing, legal language, and in a whole host of set phrases like so be it, heaven forbid, come what may, or far be it from me to say. It may be down, but it's not out. If you enjoyed this linguistic deep dive, why not check out my second channel, Frisian with Hilbert, where I look at the closest cousins of English, the Frisian languages. For now, I've been Hilbert, or I am Hilbert, as some of you insist on saying, and I hope you enjoyed the video. See you again soon.